Hi there, I'm Siobhán Fletcher, journalist in the Manx Radio newsroom. Welcome to today's edition of our newscast. This week, the Royal College of Nursing announced its members will be taking industrial action next week. Nurses on the island will strike on the 14th of September from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. Here's my report from this morning's breakfast show, now with interviews in full. In addition to the strikes announced for next week, 2 further 12-hour strikes have also been announced. They'll take place from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. on Wednesday the 18th and Thursday the 19th of October. Further details about picket lines will follow in due course. This is the latest in a series of protests over pay to be held this summer, with RCN members first taking strike action in July and subsequently holding a protest march and bus tour of the island to raise public awareness of the need for fair pay for nursing.
I am standing outside Noble's Hospital. We've got cars honking, we've got people cheering and chanting outside. And the Royal College of Nursing, they're here striking today for fair pay and retention of staff.
We are still having to call staff in so often. We've got an extortionate number of staff who are having to be medicated for depression and anxiety disorders. And our patients deserve much better than exhausted, depressed, anxious staff looking after them. And I feel that paying people better would help with our recruitment and retention.
I think nurses just need to speak up for once and be heard. You know, our voices are important. We go to work every day. We make a difference to patients every day. We save patients from other people's decisions. You know, we save lives in more manners than one.
Ahead of next week's strike action, I caught up with the RCN's Regional Director for the North West of England, Estephanie Dunn.
Our members voted for industrial action back in July, and this is the second date that we'll be taking, the one in September. And we are wanting to have nurses' pay looked at and for nurses to be paid fairly. There's also a misconception, I believe, that our members are striking for 15%. And I think we've repeatedly said that we are fighting for fair pay and we are in dispute over pay. You know, we've had a really poor history of pay being anywhere close to inflation matching for years. We have had pay disputes, pay negotiations that have extended for months and months, and we've had almost 3 years where nurses have been waiting to have their pay agreed. And the last time we had a pay award, it was actually imposed. If we go to arbitration, it is a costly exercise for taxpayers, but it also generally results in our members not receiving an improved offer. So we are actually in dispute for 22-23 pay. And that, you know, most people's pay are being settled. And they are looking at entering negotiations for 23-24. This is still outstanding. So we haven't even started to negotiate for the current year. And, you know, we're not too far away for the year after. So our members are frustrated by the lack of willingness to sit with us and negotiate what they believe is fair pay, and it's not 15%. You know, at best they've had a 4% offer here, you know, a non-consolidated offer that was then subsequently consolidated. And we just need the government to work with the employer, which is Manx Care, to ensure that there is sufficient money available for nurses to get a fair pay award that encompasses the last 3 years where we've been sort of stuck and unable to agree.
In the press release to do with this industrial action that's been announced, you know, there's some strong words in there, and you've said that the recent offers made to our members have been an insult. Do you feel like that we've kind of hit a bit of a breaking point here, because we're seeing nurses take industrial action again, and that's such a rarity, and I think that it shocks the public.
It actually shocks our members. They are incredibly sad that this is where we've come to. We've not had the opportunity to sit with the Treasury Minister and government ministers to discuss the situation and agree a way forward. We have spoken to management at Manx Care, and they have been candid in opening their, the books that explains their financial situation. And what they're telling our members is that there is no more money available that they can afford to pay. They can afford a one-off potentially, but they can't do that recurrently and cover future years. So it does actually require the government to sit down with the employer and actually have a critical look at their finances and recognise the situation the organisation's in and understand that that is what is in the way of our members achieving what is a fair pay award. I mean, 4% year on year does not touch the sides of the cost of living crisis that everybody's facing. And our members are really struggling, and nobody should be forced into poverty whilst in work. So it's a very sad day for everyone, and we don't want to be taking this action, but our members have voted, and enough is enough. They really do want to feel properly valued and fairly remunerated for the work and the high levels of responsibility that they have.
And you saying there about Manx Care, obviously you've had conversations with them as the employer, but do you think it's going to hit a point where it's not that there's not willing there, but it's also that, exactly like you say, that the government needs to step in and actually recognise that there's only so much money Manx Care have?
Absolutely. And, a deep dive into that organisation's finances should demonstrate where their financial challenges are and what is the actual resource needed to provide the safe and effective care that the members of the public on the island deserve. And our members, in delivering that safe and effective care, deserve fair pay. They shouldn't have to worry, and they shouldn't have to wait 18, 20, 24 months to get their pay settled. Meanwhile, they're surviving on a previous pay award that was imposed with nothing in between other than, drip feeding little bits of one-off payments. So it does need a root and branch review, and they need to work with Manx Care, and they need to come up with a fair settlement.
The dates that we have here, so members will take industrial action on the 14th of September and on the 18th and 19th of October. Presumably, is this conditional? Could this be called off even till the day before the day of, if those conversations take place and everyone sits at the table and actually discusses this?
Absolutely. This is what we want. We've written numerous letters to the government and we've had no response. We are very, very keen to enter into meaningful negotiations. We don't want negotiations that is just aimed at, delaying strike action and interrupting activity. It actually has to be meaningful with a real intention of meeting our members' requests, in an open and transparent way. But just doing it for the sake of it and, as a delaying tactic is neither fair or, based on integrity. And we would really want to work positively with the government to achieve, a fair settlement for our members.
Hopefully, then, we can see this resolve soon, hopefully, for all parties involved.
We do need to see it resolved because, our members don't want to do this, but they feel they're left with no alternative because what we're seeing are nurses leaving the profession. We are seeing the ones who are left behind having to do more and more work with fewer and fewer people, and also Manx Care having to spend money that they probably don't have that ought to be reserved for a fair pay award on agency and locum staff. And that's not good either.
That's all I have prepared here. Is there anything else you'd like to add at all?
Really just to say to members of the public, when we travelled across the island just to explain why nurses were taking this action, just want to thank people for their ongoing support. And, if they continue to support us and try to encourage their members of Manx government to just to sort of ask questions about this and just to help them to seek a solution, because we want to sit around the table, we want to talk, and we need to resolve this.
That was the bus campaign you did, so you saw a really positive response to that then?
It was a very positive response. Obviously, there were one or two people who were not sympathetic, but overall, there was an overwhelming majority of people who understood why we were doing this. And in fact, one person that spoke to me personally said, a fair pay award. He said, you deserve a decent pay award. And I thought that was really quite a powerful distinction.
Responding to the announcement, Manx Care released the following statement to Manx Radio, voiced here by Beth Espy.
Manx Care respects and acknowledges our colleagues' right to take industrial action. Equally, we are aware of the disruption this will undoubtedly cause to patients, service users, members of the public and our colleagues who work to provide cover during the forthcoming strike periods. Manx Care remains open to dialogue with RCN members. However, our options remain limited due to our financial constraints and having exhausted our funding envelope. All funding that has been received by the organisation to be used for pay awards has already been used to fund pay awards. Given the current financial position that Manx Care faces, making any further pay offer at this point is not possible, and Manx Care is seeking support from DHSC to assist in resolving this matter.
At a recent board meeting, Manx Care's Chief Executive Teresa says the organisation is in a difficult position.
We are looking as to how we can identify enough headroom in the budget in order to put a pay award on the table. But just to sort of give the board a sense, if we were to sort of look at a pay award of around 6%, that is sort of in the order of £8 million for the organisation to find and able to offer that. So it is a substantial amount of money in order to sort of start those pay negotiations for 23-24. And as I say, I think given our financial position, which we will come on to talk about, we do need to be escalating this appropriately to have those discussions with DHSC and broader government about how we resolve this. I think one of the difficulties that we have as Manx Care is we do not necessarily understand the broader position across all professional groups on the island. So we don't know whether other groups are in a similar position to ourselves of not being able to put an offer on the table, or indeed how our offers compare. But actually, I think we again have escalated that to have that broader understanding. I'll leave it there, but I think it is one of our significant risks that we are not able to put an offer on the table for around 2/3 of our staff.
Understandably, the decision by nurses to strike has divided opinion on the island, but many have spoken out in support. In a public statement on behalf of the Manx branch of the Celtic League, Bernard Moffatt described the proposed 3 days of strike action as something I never thought I would see. So I caught up with the ex-union head to get his perspective.
Well, I was quite astonished that it's come to nursing staff having to consider a protracted period of industrial action, several days spread over a time interval, of course. And it strikes me that relations seem to have totally broken down if you've got to that part. I mean, I can remember being involved in very serious negotiations involving health workers, ambulance staff, for example, years ago, and over the pay grading of nurses and so on. But we never got to this sort of impasse. I was even more astonished to hear on Manx Radio this morning that the nursing unions aren't even getting a response from government when they send letters. I mean, it's an incredible way to be conducting industrial relations in what is a vital sector,
Do you think that, government need to be a bit more receptive to this? Because this isn't just a Manx Care funding issue. This is now government need to step in.
Well, yeah, there was always an attempt to keep things at arm's length. I mean, when we had Whitley Council, the Treasury or the Chief Minister didn't generally get involved. But if things got serious, I can recall, for example, the Treasury Minister coming along to a meeting of Whitley Council. He didn't interfere in the negotiations, but he provided background and detail on their position and so on. And I would hope that there would be that sort of engagement, but there doesn't seem to be that at the present time. And there doesn't seem to be a structure, as there was in the past in the different areas, to address these concerns. I mean, I don't, at my age, want to be stepping in, sort of telling them how to reinvent the wheel. But to be perfectly blunt, the wheels seem to be falling off industrial relations in the Isle of Man. And if Alf Cannon is sincere in what he said at the outset of his administration, that he wants to be inclusive and have dialogue and be open and so on, this is not the way to go about it at all. It's a bit of a dog's breakfast, to put it bluntly.
You say in your post here that the government has its priorities wrong. Do you think then that's the key, that we're sort of fueling these projects elsewhere, like you mentioned the Liverpool ferry terminal and so on?
Yeah, well, to be fair, there's always been underfunding, in my view, of areas like health and education, which is really quite astonishing, because they're two absolutely vital components of any community. But the health services in particular, there's always this nonsense about there's been an overspend. There's not an overspend. The thing's under budgeted and always has been. Obviously, there's got to be a probity in how monies are handled and so on. But there's no doubt at all that we're not funding adequately. And by that I say us, the public, the taxpayer, our health services. And we've got to decide what are our priorities. Are they infrastructure projects like the Liverpool one, which is a rather grand one, and indeed the maintenance of kind of Victorian infrastructure around the island? Or do we want a modern society with a modern first-rate health service? And I would hope the answer to that is yes, we do. We want a good health service. As regards the pay, casting my mind back yesterday when I was writing that article, the island handled Agenda for Change, which was the major change in pay between management and staff about almost 2 decades ago. And you need a sort of formula like that at the present time to restore morale and also deal with the erosion that's occurred over the past 10 years in the real value of health workers' pay. And by health workers, by the way, I mean the whole shooting match, not just the nurses, ambulance staff, the technical staff, even the admin staff. The whole situation needs to be looked at, and government needs to have a hands-on approach to this. The public doesn't want this. The workers, I'm sure, don't want to go on strike, and the employer wants a settlement. For goodness sake, they should get round the table and try and come to some sort of consensus.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.